Hi there, I'm Jake, and welcome to another episode or vlog piece on my journey and my story. So pretty much, if you had been following my story, I had basically come to Afghanistan. I finished working for the Extreme Tourist, and I basically got dumped by my girlfriend and was left alone working in, I had no job basically in Afghanistan. I ended up getting a job at UNDP. I found somebody else, and I discovered that my girlfriend that I had in Afghanistan was pregnant. A weird and strange moment for me. Working for UNDP was kind of difficult in its certain sense because there were so much rules and regulations, and I kind of broke them, a lot of them, to get the project done. UNDP, the development program, there's about 30 or so different type of UN programs in Afghanistan just to make things really difficult. I worked for the Ministry of Rural Rehabilitation and Development. Man, that was a bit of a tongue twister. But I worked for them, and I was there to make videos and help produce an Afghan team working for the ministry, the Afghan ministry. And the National Area Based Development Program, which was part of UNDP, they needed their sort of annual video made. And so working for them sort of highlighted what UNDP did in this one program. I had a UN car that would take me to work, and I hated going in the car because traffic was terrible. So I would ride a bike to work. I would work out what the bus system was, which was even worse, but it was kind of fun taking the local bus and so much cheaper. I took taxis, and I rode a small capacity motorcycle to work, and that used to drive the people at the UN insane. But I was very well loved by the Afghan team. I had basically about 12 Afghan guys working for me and one Afghan woman. I feel like a lot of people didn't really respect the Afghan woman, but she was actually amazing. For the work that she did, she powered through and did probably 3 times more than what the guys could actually push out. She was mainly tasked to do videos and photos that was mainly women orientated, because I couldn't really do most of the women's stories because of, I guess, the sort of cultural sensitivities with filming women. So yeah, I had to rely on this woman. Her name was Wajma, and she was great. At one particular time, I remember, I think I got a photo somewhere of her wearing a burqa while shooting with a video camera. Hopefully I can find that and put that picture up there. My new girlfriend, her name was Marion. I wanted to say that it didn't really last so long. I think she felt a little bit out of it. I mean, I was going to have a child with somebody else, and she didn't really know what to do. Other than that, she also had an affair with one of her colleagues, and yeah, that kind of threw things in the spanner on our relationship. Anyway, UNDP was sort of coming to an end, and I had to find a new place to live because I wasn't going to get big UN money. And I was coming up with the ideas of trying to set up a production company in Afghanistan. There was another guy, Sam French. He was an American guy who, so American, the best way to put it. He was from LA, New York. He'd been there. He wanted to be a filmmaker, make movies. Basically came over to Afghanistan because his girlfriend worked for the British Embassy, and I was going to work with him, and we were going to set up a production company. But at the same time, I needed a place to live, and there was a room available at the Skater Stand house. So Skater Stand was a skateboarding sort of NGO. It was just starting in its early feet. It was kind of really grassroots, no budget, no money. But Skater Stand was all about teaching Afghan kids how to skate. And that just seemed fucking awesome. And I wanted to be kind of a part of that. I grew up skateboarding. I wasn't a really great skateboarder, but it was around that culture with basically skateboarding and graffiti and art. I knew I kind of wanted to be a part of this sort of thing. So I end up moving to the Skater Stand house, and it was kind of crazy. Yeah, it was basically running around. Whenever I had free time, development pitches was sort of working off. We were doing small time like ads and like videos and stuff for the UN and other UN programs. And I found myself with Skater Stand, I would get my motorcycle and put skateboards on the back of it. We'd have almost 8 skateboards, and we took it to this place in Makrion. So Makrion is it's these old Soviet sort of little houses that I probably would have said the communists would have lived in there, but sort of, I guess, medium sort of income sort of Afghans lived in these houses with their families. These were the only places in Afghanistan that had central heating, so there was the actual heating system down below. So they were the most sought after place you could possibly live in Afghanistan, in Kabul. This old fountain that was crackling and pulled apart, but we sometimes we concreted some of the edges so it was nice and smooth again. But this was the place that we end up teaching skateboarding, and all of these street kids would come all over the place to come and skate, and it was incredible to watch all of these kids. Even girls came to skate, and we really tried to encourage more girls to skateboard. It was the best. It was fun. But yeah, you had some really rough skateboarding kids, kids who wanted to skateboard. They lived pretty, and you had kids who were working children. So, the 3 top kids. One was Weiss. Weiss was a bit of a hoodlum, but he was the most he had no fear. He would just ride and, basically ollie over high, 5 steps, 6 steps, without even having to done 2 steps. He really did believe he could fly. There was Mirza, and Mirza, he washed cars for a living. And, once he knew that skateboards were coming out, he would rush and, finish his work and just skateboard. And then there was Norzai. And Norzai is probably the most out there, probably the most professional skateboarder Afghanistan ever produced. And Norzai, he used to have these weight scales, and you used to pay like one Afghani just to stand on the scales and weigh yourself. And he would just literally stand with that. He was very, very skinny. A lot of the street kids kind of made fun of him, but he ended up being the best skateboarding kid out of them all. It was really incredible. And now I'm going to have to talk about Skater Stand in 2 parts, because it spanned a lot of my years living in Afghanistan. But there was also Fazila. And Fazila was probably the first Afghan girl who could skate well. She was very shy, but she kind of opened up to me. And in a way, she was kind of like my daughter to me. I would buy her bolani, and we'd have that for breakfast, and we would go. I would just make sure that she was okay, that she was going to go to school. Now, She was, a beggar basically who worked on the streets, and she was mainly in the traffic trying to get money, and you know, and it was kind of sad to see her on the streets. But I was glad that we could, try and afford her to go to school and give her some money. And she just loved skateboarding. It was great. It was so good. My daughter, Mia, now she was being born, and she was going to be in my life. And I remember at the time, I was actually playing golf. There was actually a golf tournament in Afghanistan, if you could actually believe that. The grass and stuff was terrible. It was mainly mud pits. But when I heard the news that Mia was born, I actually won that match. I just was on top of the world. And I got to see her a week later in Bolzano, Italy. And it was the most amazing day of my life. And I remember seeing her and just being so much in love with this little, precious little girl. And I was probably the most happiest my whole life. And I knew that all I wanted to do was see her as many times as possible. It was kind of a weird time for me because obviously I was separated from her mother. And I decided that I'd live in Afghanistan. But then also living in Afghanistan, I was close and was able to go and see her. And I needed to make it work. Living in Afghanistan and her being in Bolzano, if I went back to Australia, I'd be so far away. Afghanistan seemed like a good opportunity to make money, and there was plenty of jobs that was going through, and I could get those jobs and get paid well enough, fly back to Dubai, and then from Dubai I get to Bolzano. And go and see my daughter. And it was incredible. That was my plan. See her as many times as I could possibly could. Do whatever I needed to do to go see her. So, so we had development pitches. We did mainly commercials for like banks, and we did commercials for telecommunications. That was the big money sort of stuff. And we also did some other jobs for the UN, for UN MACA, which was Mine Action Clearance Center, UNIFEM, UNICEF. They were also big money, but also DFID and DFAT. I worked also for the US, for DIAG, and all these different sort of programs. I flew all over Afghanistan. I went to different army bases, working and implementing different programs, different projects, and did whatever it took to make money to live and to be able to afford seeing my daughter as many times as I possibly could. And it was incredible. And around this time, I met a whole bunch of journalists. They needed photographers. An article I worked with was Mary Colvin, and she was this wild old lady, I guess, but she had an eye patch, and she was so strong-willed, and so there were people who just were in awe of her, like knew this legend. I actually didn't really know so much about journalists as much as I did, but I went out on a few projects with her to take photos, and there was always a need for a freelancer to come in and help journalists, cover stories. I was there and able and willing to go all over Afghanistan. My motorcycle that I rode. I started off with a Pamir. It was a 125cc Iranian copy of like a Honda CB 125. That bike was... I rode that everywhere. At one particular time, I think I got up to about 140 kilometers an hour, and one of the pistons popped out through the top part of the engine. But that bike was also really easy to repair and put back together. Then I realized that a lot of the foreigners, they had Japanese dirt bikes, and it was kind of the thing to have a Japanese dirt bike. So I had what was called an Enholo to start off with. And then I found a DRZ 400. And that DRZ 400 ended up being my bike. I rode that everywhere. Various times, the gas tank. It was bright yellow. And I got petrol all over that. It was kind of all over the place. But I love this bike, and I rode it all the way up to the top of Afghanistan, to Mazar, to Bamiyan, and take these long rides. It was incredible, and it just was an amazing, crazy ass journey. Now, I didn't have much in we ride motorcycles in Afghanistan without a helmet and wouldn't think really much of it. And it would be troublemakers. There's all these different bars to go to, so you go bar hopping with these bikes, and you just be the ultimate badass. And, everyone sort of knew who you were. You were kind of cool because you had your own bike, you had your own freedom. And it was a great time. Like, I literally, I would cruise up to the job on my motorbike. Yeah, to all the expats. You were a legend. And it was a lot of fun. And, also, at that time I was, single, and, you used to get to meet a lot of, girls as well that are single. And it's weird, like the whole environment and culture, especially there is like you're there to have a fun time almost. It really felt like you were at basically in high school or university, and you're having the best time of your life, going out. The beers are super cheap. Pubs and bars are super cheap. There's this chaotic Afghan sort of life and things that you have to sort of delve and deal with. There was also Taliban attacks as well. But, things were absolutely kind of crazy and chaotic. But it was almost like being young again. And, being on top of the game. I literally was a changed person. And no longer this sort of young, nerdy kid. I was a badass, basically. There was a motorcycle club called the Kabul Knights Motorcycle Club. At that particular time and era, I wasn't part of the club because I was friends with the guys from Skaterstan, and there was this big sort of, feud, or just, there was a big split up between everybody, and people weren't friends, and you had the sort of pick sides, but I was new to it all, so I wasn't really part of the Kabul Knights Motorcycle Club, but people knew who I was, and you just live in this way crazy life. End this episode with this one journalist, Nima Abagia, and I went to Kandahar with her to go and work to do an article for Channel 4 for the ICRC. And this is where I'm going to end this episode, because talking about that, this one is a whole episode in itself. So I'm very glad if you've been listening to me talk, and I will try and keep this up more often and try and do this weekly if I can. It's a bit of a time between doing the work that you are doing, and I'm pretty much working almost every single day, doing the hustle, making some money, and trying to hopefully print out my book. I know my photo book, there's a particular part that I need to take to come to the end of the chapters in my book, and that's really goes with a road trip with my daughter when she finally comes. So yeah, my daughter Mia is going to be, well, she is 16 years old, but she's coming on a road trip with me. And and it's funny just talking about all of this adventures and seeing her for the first time. And now she's 16 years old, and this is as long as this journey has taken me. So I'm going to say goodbye for now, and I look forward to talking about the next trip and the next adventures. I'll catch you then.